Hi everyone, this is Bev Grey. I'm going to show you another project I made using the news story card die. This project is a card that has the words "Just the Facts" on the bottom and the lines on the top. And I'm going to start by using a white 3x4 inch card that I cut out with the story card die. Now I also cut out a tan card, same size, using the steel dies. But if you were using a digital die cutting machine, you could absolutely make all the elements I'm showing here using the digital die lines too. Now many graphic design experts recommend using the rule of thirds, and I'm doing that on this project where I'm taking about a third for the Just the Facts craft colored piece, and then the other 2/3 are going to be where the lines go. So to do that, I'm not going to worry too much about trimming this precisely, but I am going to cut it to be about 1 1/4 to 1 1/2, somewhere in between those two, so that I've got that bottom piece ready to be stamped on. Now I could stamp on this a couple different ways. I could go ahead and adhere it down to the white piece of paper, but there are some disadvantages by doing that. One of the disadvantages is that when you're stamping on multiple layers, it's easy to not get a very good impression. So instead, I'm going to get out my stamp from the Important Stuff stamp set and stamp it just onto that craft piece without any additional layers. Now one of my tips is that when you are getting ready to stamp, put the stamp down onto the project and look at it and make sure it's straight, make any adjustments you need to make, and then use the block to pick up that stamp. You can also adjust where that stamp fits onto that block so that you're using the block to align it with the project. In this case, I'm aligning the bottom of the block with that craft piece. Now I'm using just a little bit of powder to make sure that that ink is ready for that cardstock piece is ready for the ink, and I'm using the Deep Lagoon VersaFine ink to ink up that stamp. Now you can see that I got a little bit of extra blue ink there, and I'm just taking a baby wipe and wiping that off so that it doesn't get onto my project. Then I'm lining up the bottom of that block with that craft cardstock and then stamping it straight down and straight up. And you have to be careful when you've got the stamp a little low on the block, that you don't twist it or rock it when you're stamping. Now I'm patting the powder down again onto that ink to help set that ink and make sure it doesn't bleed. And then just tap off that excess powder, and then I would set that aside and give it a little bit of time to dry before I wiped it or wiped the extra powder off of it. Now there are a couple different ways that you could get the journaling lines onto your Just the Facts card, and I'm going to show you the way that I did it. I got a little carried away and I adhered the Just the Facts piece down onto the white background, and I used permanent adhesive. So I decided that I just needed to add the lines onto the card the way that it exists, and I'm using lines from the Well-Worn Journal stamp set. Now I could just go ahead and stamp that straight onto the background and hope that I don't get any onto that tan piece, but I also wanted it to not go too high on it so that the quote mark would fit too. So what I'm doing is I'm taking some of that painter's tape, blue painter's tape, and I've made sure it's not very sticky, and I'm just covering up that Just the Facts piece at the bottom, and at the top I'm making sure that the lines won't go too high. So now I don't have to really plan too much about how those lines are going to be stamped down onto that piece. Now I'm taking the lines and I'm going to go ahead and ink up using that Deep Lagoon VersaFine ink pad. And now I'm going to line it up just above the tape. Stamp it down, and again I'm stamping a little slowly so that the ink has time to penetrate into the paper. And then I'm going to ink it up again. And now I don't have to worry about whether I'm going too high or not. I just have to line it up so that it matches the lines that are already there. And you can see that some of those lines are going to get stamped onto that painter's tape, and that's okay because when I remove it, it won't be onto the project, it'll just stay on the painter's tape. Now I'm using that powder again from the embossing pouch, and I think it's called the Perfect Crafting pouch, and then peeling up the painter's tape to reveal the journaling lines. And I'm pretty happy with the results. Now I'm topping off that extra powder and using a baby wipe to just wipe up the extra powder. And you can see the card with the lines on it. Now let me show you another way of doing those journaling lines that probably would have been easier had I not already adhered down the just the facts piece. And that is to start with the blank white card. I'm going to use the same journaling lines from the Well-Worn Journal stamp set and just ink it up with that same Deep Lagoon ink. And I'm going to start from the bottom and just add the lines from the bottom onto that white background. I'm inking it up again and looking through it to position it and then stamping another set of lines. Now there's kind of an extra space there up at the top that I want to add one more line into, but I don't want to get it where it should be, so I'm going to just go ahead and put down that masking tape to cover up part of the white card and then use that set of lines that I've already inked up to add one more line into that space. And you can see that the extra lines are now on the masking or painter's tape instead of on the project. So this just gives you one more way of making as many journaling lines as you need. I'm tapping some of that powder onto it to set the ink, and then tapping off the excess powder. And then I could go ahead and add that craft colored piece and stamp onto the craft colored piece whatever saying I wanted to go on at the bottom of it. So whether you've done it in the order that I did it, where you stamped the piece and adhered it down and then added the journaling lines, or did the journaling lines first and then added the craft piece, there are good uses for masking on your project. Now to finish this Just the Facts card, I just added a little bit of masking tape and some quote marks. Now my little stash of pieces that came with the story card dies includes some quote marks that are already pre-cut. And again, if you are a digital die cutting person, you can get all of these elements with the story card digital cut file instead. I made these particular ones with the steel dies. And then I added just that washi tape to finish it off and some dimensional adhesive to pop up those quote marks. I wanted to show you another journaling card that I made using these same stamp sets and the story card dies. This is the Hello card, and I used the journaling lines down at the bottom instead of the top, and I really didn't have to use masking. I just stamped all the lines there. On this particular project lifestyle pocket page style layout, I could use the Just the Facts card there to finish that pocket page layout. Or I suppose that I could make a traditional 12 by 12 layout using those same pictures. Now I haven't actually done it, I'm just looking at it here to see what I think of it, and I think it actually could turn out. I'd need some embellishments and perhaps some more photos to make a good 12 by 12 layout, but I like the look of that. And then I also thought about making a card out of this and maybe stamping I love you on it, or writing I love you in those lines, or writing some birthday message about just the facts about how much I appreciate the person whose birthday it is. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I made the Just the Facts card, and I hope you learned some things about masking. If you'd like to see more projects like this one, visit our blog. Terry Anderson is going to be doing a series of blog posts called Story Card Sundays that feature these story card dies. I can't wait to see the projects she makes.